You are now tuned into Trading Materials for Peace of Mind, hosted by me, Joseph Cooper, and today is the destination episode. And what we're going to talk about today is that we are not in competition with anyone, and we are not racing against anyone. And what I want to explain about that is when I say that we cannot compete against anyone and no one can compete with us, that is because we are playing a whole different game than everyone else. What God has for us is only for us and us only. What God has for me is not what God has for you, and what God has for you is not for me. So how can we get into keeping up with the Joneses and trying to compete with our friends, our family, our coworkers, our neighbors, our strangers, our enemies, or whatever it may be? Is that is something that we cannot do. That is something that is programmed and engineered to people to keep them oppressed and to keep them down. We can only do what God has written for us. And I don't think people really have a good grasp or understanding on that, is that it's already been written what God has planned for us. And we just need to be faithful, we need to stay prayerful, and we need to stay righteous, and we need to keep our trust and faith in the Lord, because that is the only way we are going to receive all of our blessings, is by being prayerful and faithful in the Lord Jesus Christ, and not to get corrupted and engaged in sinful behavior, negative behavior, hateful behavior, anything that takes us away from God, because God is righteous. He is the righteous one. And this is something that we need to keep, that peace and ascension in our lives, to always be positive, to always do better today, be better today than what we were yesterday, be better tomorrow than what we are today, because the only way we are going to reach that finish line and reach that goal is keeping God number one and making sure that we live the life that God has set us out to live. And another thing that I want to talk about is that we keep trying to feel like we need to race people or achieve something quicker than somebody else. But the thing is that we cannot race anyone because our destinations are not the same. My destination is not your destination. Your destination is not mine. We are going to a different place. So how can we race someone that's not even going to the same destination as us, that's not even having the same finish line as us? So we can never be in any type of comparison with anyone, because what we're trying to do is not going to match what another person's trying to do, because that's not the way God's plan works. When God has a plan, it is tailor-made for us. It is tailor-made for you. And like I said, what God has for you is not God's plan for her or God's plan for him. So we need to make sure that we're not trying to race anyone thinking that I have to achieve such and such before this person. Because like I've said in a previous episode, there is no such thing as competition. We cannot compete with anyone, because we're not even in the same realm. We're not even chasing the same thing. So how can we race someone we're not even chasing the same thing? Our goals are different. They say keep your eyes on the prize. What my prize is going to be different from my neighbors. It's going to be different from my family. It's going to be different from my friends. It's completely different. So I'm not in a race, and I'm not trying to rush into anything, because I'm not trying to move faster than the next person, because like I said, our destinations are completely different. And I know where my heart is set on. I know where my faith is. I know where my trust is. I know where my love is. So I would never even think about trying to race anyone to anything. And this is why I talk about we cannot live life in the fast lane. And the thing about the fast lane is that this whole program of the fast lane, it's mythical. It doesn't exist. We get drawn up thinking that there's a fast lane and then there's a slow lane. And if you're in the slow lane, you're doing something wrong. And if you're in the fast lane, that you're doing something right. Well, I'm here to tell you that there is no such thing as the fast lane. There is not. There is no expiration date on achieving your goals. There's no expiration date on achieving what God has planned for you. Because as long as God put breath into your lungs and woke you up this morning, then there is no expiration date. We're going to keep on going until we reach it. And I know sometimes that may be difficult when you think that maybe something that was meant for you was given to maybe someone else. But in all reality, the grass always looks greener on the other side. But the truth is, like I said, what's for that person may not be for you. And what's for you may not be for that person. So don't ever compare yourself to anyone that's doing anything, because y'all are two different people living two different lives. So don't even get caught up or wrapped up into this negative spin about where we should be in life. And I need to be on the fast track. I can't move at a slow pace. No, we need to get rid of that. That is nothing but the devil. That is how the devil creeps in. That is how because the devil is always working. And sometimes the devil is working overtime. And the devil only comes to steal joy. The devil is a thief. And that is in the scripture. And that is what the devil, that's the devil's primary occupation, is to steal joy, thief, wreak havoc, and try to pull us away from God. But the good news is that God's working too. And God's work is better than anyone else's work. And no one can even come close to his work. So even though that's Satan's working, but he's not working as hard as God. He doesn't have that power. He's not omnipotent. He's not the Alpha and the Omega. He's not the one that sits on the throne. He's not the one that sits high. So that's why Satan will always lose. But Satan is out here looking for victories, though. And Satan, his form of victory is, like I said, is creeping in and stealing the joy from a person. Making a person think that they're worthless. Making a person think that they're not worthy of God's love and God's grace and God's mercy. That is how Satan's looking for victories. But Satan's victories, they don't exist. Not in the Lord's house. Like I said, because God reigns supreme. And God is always going to make sure that he gives us the tools that we need to fight and overcome that negativity and that sin. And even when sometimes that fight gets too big to bear, then God will always take control and step in, because that's what God does. Because my God is an ever-loving God. It is a God that works with the impossible and makes it possible. My God is the God that moves mountains. So when something looks like it's too difficult and we're not going to make it, that's when God steps in. And so when God is moving, but the thing about it is, when God's moving, we have to let him move. We have to let God come in. And sometimes we get wrapped up in these worldly things and these secular things. And what those things do is tries to pull us away from God and tries to make us forget who's number one. Because sometimes when we forget who's number one, then we become number one. But that's that sin. That's that believing in the flesh. That's that, I'm going to believe in myself, or I'm going to believe in another man. And God already said, don't put your trust in man. You can't do that because man will always let you down. But God is one that will never let anyone down. So we need to make sure that we're always looking high and don't get consumed by the world and consumed by these earthly things and these secular things, because those things, they don't matter. And what the program is out here, it's tricking us into think that these things matter and think that these things somehow define us. And what they try to do is that they try to make us very small when God has put us on this earth so His love, so we can be big in Him. So we can put our love in Him, our faith in Him, our trust in Him. But the world is trying to confuse us and lie to us and make us feel small and make us feel like we're not worthy, and it puts us on a path puts us on a path of sin when we need to be righteous. So and those are the things I'm speaking about, is that these things out here, they're here to confuse us. They're there to lie to us, deceive us, and take our joy away and take our pain away. Is when we get so wrapped up in the world and we get so wrapped up in people or whatever, trying to compete and trying to race anyone for accomplishments and what we perceive as goals. And like I said, what God has for us is not for anyone else. And I talked about this in the last episode. We need to let Jesus be the quarterback. We need to make sure that when Jesus throws that touchdown, our eyes are open and our hands are out ready to receive. Because there's so much sin out here. That sin, it makes it hard to see God, because that's what sin does. It closes, it clouds our vision. And we can't see God clearly. And when you can't see God clearly, then you're going to miss out on His blessings. You're going to miss out on His grace, because we can't see Him, and we can't see Him through the sin. We can't see Him through the lies, the deception, because like I said, the secular things, all those things are there to make it difficult to see God. But when you remove those things, you can see God clearly, and you can see God working. Because one of the things I would hate for anyone to think or feel is that God is not near, or God is not working. But when God is everywhere, God's always working. He never takes a second off. He never closes His eyes. His eyes are always on us, but we need to make sure we keep our eyes on Him, because that's where we start to lose the battle. Is that we get so distracted by these worldly things, we take our eyes off of God and we start looking elsewhere. We start looking to material things. We start looking to worldly things. We start looking at money. We start looking at people. And when you turn your eyes away from God, yeah, you're gonna miss those. You're gonna miss those blessings. You're gonna forget that God's working. You're gonna forget that God hears and sees everything. But get your eyes off of that and put them back on the Lord. And watch what God's doing. Because when you start feeling God's work, not especially on you, but also on the things and the people around you, that is a feeling of mercy. It's a feeling of grace, because in all reality, we as people are not worthy of God's grace, but that's why it's called grace. He's doing it out of love, because God is love. So even when we're feeling low and sometimes we're feeling hurt, we're feeling pain, you cannot keep your eyes off of God. That's where they need to be at all times. So what I'm getting at is stay prayerful and stay righteous. And righteous means always doing what is right. Even when the world is doing wrong, you have to stay right. You have to. We cannot divvy we can't go, well, I see people are doing this. I'm looking at the news and people are going this way. Like I said, when it comes to God, right is right and wrong is wrong. And which path are we going to take? And I hope we take the righteous path, and I hope we take the path that leads us to Jesus. And I hope that we're living the way that Jesus did when he was here on earth, and that we use Jesus's 33 years on this earth as the blueprint for our lives on how we love one another, how we treat one another, how we speak to one another, and how we give grace and mercy to one another, and how we forgive one another, and most importantly, how we love one another. That is where we have to keep our eyes. And like I said, we need to be more like Jesus and less like everyone else. So with that being said, I want you to keep your eyes on the Lord, keep your eyes on God, and remember that we are not in competition with anyone, and we are not racing anyone, because our destinations are not the same. But we need to make sure that we reach our destination by keeping God first. Because if we keep God first, we're going to reach that destination. Like I said, it's already been written. God has it for us. So I definitely want to leave on that note. I know it's been a while since my last podcast episode, but definitely stay tuned. We're gonna have so much more for the new year in 2025, because God is working on me, and I see the things that God has planned, not just for me, but for everyone. But we just need to keep God first. I would like to end my podcast by saying that please follow me on the socials. Whether it's Instagram or whether it's Twitter or TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, you can find me under the name @MinimalistPeace. That is where you can find me on all the socials. I'm usually posting inspirational, positivity, ascending posts. I'm also that's where you'll find out when there's a new podcast episode out. With that being said, God bless and good night.